Today, International Banker is in Belgium and joined by Johan Thijs, CEO of KBC Group, to discuss the bank's ongoing digital transformation, the innovation which drives that transformation, and KBC's wider role in society. Really good to be here. Nice to see you.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
Now, you've previously described KBC's digital transformation as an offering which combines human-to-human advice with digital methods and artificial intelligence. What does that actually mean in practice? And do you have any examples to support this statement?
It's indeed actually something very, very particular, and is driven by the starting point of everything. It is the change of customer behavior. What we do see in the outside world is that customers are massively changing their behavior, which means they're inspired by what they experience by Googles and the Facebooks of this world. And they all tend to evolve in the same direction. They expect from financial institutions like, amongst others, KBC, to do exactly the same thing. Now, traditionally, we were organized via bank branches or insurance agency. But that shift now is happening to service us as a customer more proactively, and we prefer also to have digital approach as well. Digital applications like mobile apps and so on and so forth. And that's what we currently are doing. Now, what is extremely important is that we do see a massive shift from our customers by using the mobile applications, but on the proactive approach, a lot of financial institutions still have to do a lot of work. And now comes the interaction between human and the machine. Let's call it AI. Human is obviously the servicing of customers via bank branches or call centers. And machine is, let's try to proactively anticipate what the customer really needs so that we can offer him as of the moment that we approach him, or as of the moment he or she approaches us, the solution which is tailored to his needs. And in order to do so, the machine will start to interfere with the human being. And then ultimately, is the customer going to decide who is she going to use? The digital channel or the human channel? Or both, why not?
But that choice is an important element of that.
This is the driver. In KBC, we have explicitly chosen to follow the change of customer behavior. So not the other way around. We are not intending to push our opinion on what the customer should use in terms of our distribution channel. So in this perspective, it's indeed the customer is going to decide.
Okay, well, given this kind of increasingly rapid rate of development of banking products and services, how challenging is it to ensure that KBC remains consistently at the forefront of that kind of innovation?
In terms of offering it to the client and definitely what the customer sees as such, that's not the challenge. We can launch apps every month if we need to, but that is not the real importance. The real importance is that we as an institution which is there already for 75 or more years, we have obviously a huge legacy system, and we have to take into account also other elements like, for instance, regulatory requests and so on and so forth. So servicing the customer on the front end, on what he or she sees on his device, is the starting point. And the real challenge is not launching the app, but the real challenge is to make that app go straight through our processes in order to create convenience for the ultimate customer. And that is, given the fact that we all have legacy systems, the real challenge for us as a financial institution. That's also where we spend most money in. That is, how are we going to make the experience of the customer super convenient, but at the same time also take care of the fact that in our processes we can go straight through, back to back, end to end, to the customer.
And now I understand also that KBC's digital transformation extends to covering its risk management capabilities. What are the most innovative solutions being devised or already operating in this area?
Where do you want me to start? Because we have been doing a lot of stuff. Let me take you perhaps also in what we see today is quite important in the markets. Let me take one of the examples, which is quite new. We do it in a very particular way and has some great results. And I'm talking about the compliance area. So the financial industry obviously has to take care of a lot of regulation, and definitely in terms of the anti-money laundering request, the bar has been constantly raised. So also KBC has been investing quite a lot of money into that, not only in the recent past, but also the last 10, 15 years. What we now are doing is to invest more in that domain, but no longer via purely human beings, making an analysis of transactions of customers or making analysis on the know your customer part, but we are investing massively in artificial intelligence. so in innovative technologies. And in this respect, we have been completely changing the approach, where it was in the past a rule-based approach, into a more holistic view, where we use internal and external data. And hereby, new technology, and I'm definitely referring to artificial intelligence, is extremely helpful and extremely powerful. If I look at the results, at the output of those systems built, then what we can see is that the output delivered by the machine, compared to the previous approach, is ×7 better than what it used to be.
So a powerful tool in your arsenal.
That's an understatement.
Now, earlier you mentioned KBC Mobile, and it has a vast array of services available that enable customers to go beyond banking, including those related to mobility, access to service checks, meal and eco checks. Which particular non-banking service in this area do customers seem to value the most?
You know, when we launched that a couple of years ago, we thought, let's introduce all those elements which go beyond bank or beyond insurance, which have what I call a high frequency rate. If customer is using stuff in the outside world on a regular basis for which he needs to pay, let's introduce that into our app as an additional service. And you already mentioned a couple of them in your question. The one they prefer most and which they use most today is everything which is related to public transport. It's massively used. It goes beyond our expectation. And it's because of convenience. It's because of safetiness. I mean, when they pay via the KBC app, they're sure about the transaction. And to give you an example, we have about 150,000 of customers who are using this almost every day, which is more than 10% of our mobile banking customers. Now, that's after 3 months launch. So we are in the early stage of the process, and it's massively picked up. And on the top of that, we get a lot of sympathy from our customers because the public systems which are doing exactly the same thing, if you go to a train station, you have to buy a ticket on the public machine, which is available most of the time, don't work. But, you know, there's an alternative. And when the alternative is created, they choose for the easiest one and the most convenient one, and that appears to be the KBC app. Now, this is for our customers, but we recently launched, actually a week ago, the same possibility for non-customers. So now it's really going to pick up.
Now, you mentioned earlier not forcing things on your customers, and part of your digital transformation places a really heavy focus on developing an omnichannel strategy, which allows the customers themselves to decide how they contact you. Which particular channel are you seeing the greatest levels of kind of increase in customer contact?
You know, mobile has been picking up tremendously. I mean, if you would have asked me 5 years ago how much customers and percentage-wise would pick for the mobile channel, probably I would have given you a number which is today completely wrong, underestimated at that time. And in this perspective, this continues to grow. What is true is that mobile is the preferred channel by customers. But at the same time, and it all depends on the product which they want to be serviced in, they make the switch between or mobile and human. And in human, you have the different interfaces. You can go to a bank branch, but also you can go to a call center, which we call in our case KBC Live. So what we see today is that actually it's mostly the time for a lot of customers becoming a combination, so a combination of different channels, depending on the type of product with this service. For straightforward payments, it's mobile, clear. For other more complex products, they prefer to have the mobile transaction guided by, for instance, a call with the call center, KBC Live. So if you ask me which is the preferred one, I would say it's mobile, but it's also mobile and the call center.
Now, we've talked about innovation quite a lot. Does it mean something different, though, when applied to KBC's banking business strategy vis-a-vis its insurance business strategy?
Now, intrinsically, it's the same. We have the same approach, the same starting position, so it's about customer servicing, and it's about paying attention to what the customer wants in a proactive manner. That is for both entities exactly the same, purely 100% identical. But the business type is a little bit different. Whereas on the banking side, I call it the aftermath, the after sale, is quasi non-existent. You know, on the insurance side, definitely on the non-life part, the P&C part, it's fundamental. So in that perspective, we have a starting position which is the same, but the implicit and the explicit implementation of that is a little bit different on the banking and the insurance side.
Okay. Now, during KBC's digital transformation journey, which attributes of your digital offerings have you found clients consider the most important? For example, is it speed or simplicity? And if what they consider to be the most important is consistently changing over time, How do you ensure KBC remains sufficiently adaptable to meet those changing needs?
It's an interesting question, also a very difficult one to answer, because I think that this is evolving over time. I mean, if you would ask me, you only have only one possibility to answer, I would say convenience. Now, perhaps that's an easy answer because it's actually an umbrella which I've given you as an answer, because convenience is triggered by what? Can be triggered by speed, can be triggered by the easiness of your process, can be triggered by ... So, honestly, it's about convenience. Your customer is triggered sometimes by speed. If he wants to have a mortgage instantly, he needs to get an answer as soon as possible. But sometimes for the same mortgage, it doesn't matter how fast the answer comes, but the process itself, the hassle which is normally involved in the mortgage process, he doesn't want to be bothered with that. So let me straightforward, what is triggering the customers most is convenience, and I think that answer will be valid for the next coming years as well. And that's a real challenge for us as a company, because we constantly need to balance between what the customer needs and that need can depend on the type of product he wants to be serviced with. And that's the ultimate challenge for us.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, for the third year running, you have been voted into the top 10 in the Harvard Business Review top 100 CEOs in the world list. So I ought to say immediately, many congratulations for that. Secondly, what do you consider to be the most important personal trait in order to be a successful CEO?
Yeah, you know, first of all, being in that ranking is indeed a quite honor, and it's obviously not my merit. I have 42,000 people which are servicing our customers in a perfect manner, and the output of that, the end result of that, is appreciated indeed by the HBR Harvard Business Review to be quite good. And in that perspective, I'm ultimately, as the CEO, the one who is then featuring in the ranking. But not to play it down entirely. Obviously, I have a role to play as well. And, you know, for us, it's quite important. The starting position, which we have defined as the ultimate strategy of KBC, is very simple in its concept. In our strategy is only 5 words. We have introduced simplicity in this perspective into the company, give a clear vision. This is what we want to do. This is your role as our employee, which we try to give as much as empowerment as possible. And this is what we are heading for. And I have to admit, this is particularly my role. I have to admit that our people picked it up quite well. And the end result is that, you know, we're doing not too badly. So we have been nominated a couple of times, amongst others by your magazine, as doing well in certain domains. And the prize which I liked most was Best Customer Service in Western Europe, which is the ultimate goal. Obviously, end results follows for our shareholders as well in the return they receive, but everything starts with the great customer experience. So in this perspective, yes, it's the success of KBC Group. It's triggered by a lot of people, and I play a role in that as well.
And thinking about that kind of empowerment that you're giving people, back in May 2019, KBC announced the Executive Committee had started a group-wide internal exercise to further optimise and simplify the governance model at management level and the decision-making processes. For what reason has this been undertaken, and how's it going?
For us, and definitely also from a personal perspective, I think we have 42,000 people in this group. We have a lot of smart people, a lot of people who know a lot of stuff. They know the markets, they know the customers, and so on and so forth. Release that potential. In order to release that, you empower your people. Hierarchy could be the killer game. Hierarchy could be indeed bringing down that creativity too, because the boss decides first you have to pass via me before you can launch that idea. And you know, in a certain perspective, I came together with my management committee to the conclusion that we have just too much management layers, which is delaying the process. As such, that's also something which you don't like, but anyway, what's far more important is it also hampers the usage of the creativity and the innovation and of the spirit of our people and our staff. And in order to bring that more to the forefront, we said, let's take out another management layer, which enables more empowerment, groups become bigger, which enables more, streaming through our ideas, which enables us to be more effective on servicing customers better. And for that reason, we introduced that in May. Now, the next step was immediately set in September, because we are now driving that through the whole organization. So it's not only stopping at the management layers, it's stopping actually at all leadership level across the group.
And also in September, along with several other leading banks, KBC signed the Collective Commitment to Climate Action, an initiative of the United Nations Environmental Programme Finance Initiative. What impact is this initiative expected to have? And looking forward, what do you consider to be the single most important action that KBC and the banking industry in general can take to reduce the impact of climate change?
You know, when we talk about the disruption ongoing in the financial industry, mostly of the time people speak about the digital impact, you know, and then also obviously they refer to the fintechs or they refer to the big techs, which is all true. I would add one particular element next to those as well, and that is indeed disruption created by what you just described in your question, amongst others the environmental impact and the role we have to play into that. I think this is the next big thing, and with next I mean today it's already happening. If I look at what is currently in the pipeline of a lot of regulatory institutions, amongst others the European Commission, then indeed we as banks have a role to play. I think that most of the time they also look at the banks to actually help implement regulators, supervisors, that kind of solutions to the issue, for instance climate change as well. That's one side. The other side, I think we as financial institutions have indeed a role to play. We have a role to play in society, we have a role to play to all those elements who influence that society, and one of them is the environmental impact. As a financial institution granting a lot of loans, billions and billions of loans, we can indeed influence that impact by considering whom we are granting a loan to. And you know, I consider this to be a societal loan for an institution like ours, and for that reason KBC has not only signed those agreements but also is implementing them already for many, many years in our institution, and we will be indeed on the forefront of the implementation of all those new ways of thinking.
Now, we've talked about KBC's wider role in society and in particular climate change, for example, also beyond banking, but the group states it's involved through initiatives relating to entrepreneurship as well. Which initiatives are these specifically?
You know, when the group was founded, let's say 100 years ago, the people who did that were entrepreneurs. And so those elements, these are the real roots of our group. And when we started to think 10 years ago or about 8-9 years ago about how can we play an important role in our society, we actually just went back to our roots. That is, let's foster and let's stimulate that entrepreneurship in all the countries where we're present. We started in Flanders, but we're now obviously building that in all the countries where we currently are present. And in concreto, what it means is we started up an initiative, and we use the name in every country where we're active, which is called Start It at KBC, which means that KBC facilitate youngsters, entrepreneurs, people with a bright idea on a product, on a service which you want to develop, but I mean, they're bothered with all the hassle around that, the accounting part, the IT part, you name it, administrative part. And that particular part we take out of their hands. So they can keep themselves with all their energy busy in developing their ideas around the new product which they want to bring to the market. Now, those facilities created, we take into account, not only financially, but also organization-wide. And that's what we establish group-wide. Next to that, we have, for the minimum, facilitated all other elements which are necessary to make the next step. I'll give you two examples. We have created KBC Vendor, which is a kind of Tinder of KBC, where entrepreneurs with bright ideas, which could help other entrepreneurs, can actually come to a platform and say, listen, I have a solution for you. Who is interested? Let me know. I will share my ideas, how you as an entrepreneur can make the next step. And then the last one, I call it, it's called KBC Match It. I call it the dating side of KBC, where we bring together entrepreneurs who have a current activity, who want, for one or the other reason, for instance, they have no successors, to sell that company, but don't have the immediate partner in the near environment. We created a platform where they can bring that proposal on the table. We will assess all our entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurs community to see if they are interested, and we bring them together, and then they can potentially to a deal. So that's all facilitating from the origination till the very end, and everything in between, things which are related to entrepreneurship.
So this is very people-focused, and thinking about the kind of skills and training, how do you ensure that the training you offer your folks remains up to date, especially so they can deal competently with the kind of ever-changing technology that they're facing?
Yeah, that's a huge challenge, and that's, it's a very, very, very difficult one as well. I think intrinsically we have plenty of skills in our community, but not necessarily the same skills which you need to be future-proof in the era which we're currently working in within the company. So we have a double challenge. The first one is with the people which we have, with the skills we need to have tomorrow, how can we match them? And if they are not matching, how can we train those people in order to make them indeed future-proof with the skills? And if they're not available in the company, where can we find them outside the company? Now what we currently are doing is indeed to create what I just said in a kind of a platform way. We bring into account all the skills people have, also the skills we don't know, so they have the possibility to enter their own skills into the system. We know better what we are going to need in the near future, what kind of skills you need to have to do job X in, let me say something, 5 years. And then we have a fully AI-driven platform which brings the two together. People with skills which need a little bit more training will be triggered by the system in order to follow trainings which we then provide to them, either ourselves, either via universities or whatever it takes. And then last but not least, if we then indeed come to the conclusion, we don't find them, the same application is able to go via external systems to look on the outside market. But this, everything combined, is a huge challenge. And not only for financial institutions, I think for the market as a whole for the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, with more and more forecasts of a continued economic slowdown, or even perhaps a recession here in the Eurozone, how much of a concern is this to you? And would you say that KBC is adequately prepared for such a scenario?
Yeah, we have a lot of challenges. We have been indeed talking up so far amongst others about digitization and the impact of customers on our business model. But I think indeed the intrinsic underlying drivers which are crucial for a financial institution, amongst others the interest rates, the financial markets as a whole, have a big impact. And last but not least, economic growth is in that perspective indeed a very important parameter. Up so far, and I think also going forward in let's say the nearby future, up so far we have been doing great, and that is something which we can continue to do. But it goes without saying that the current interest rate environment is indeed having an impact on and putting pressure on our results. KBC has been always performing in the high teens ROEs, but given circumstances that is today a real challenge. On top of that, I would add also that obviously because of the further evolution of the ECB and the further evolution of regulation, that in itself, I'm not saying not for good reason, on the contrary, is having an impact on financial institutions as well. But if all of that is combined, personally, and I can speak for KBC, I will not speak about financial institutions in general, we are very well prepared to face the challenges of the future. And obviously I hope also that supervisors continue to do what they have been doing in a very balanced way, taking into account you have supervision, you have regulation, but you have also to build your future as well.
And finally, what do you consider to be KBC's biggest priority in 2020?
The major priority I would put forward, that is to constantly anticipate changing customer behavior. Now, it's easy said, but I think it's a huge challenge because it entails all the different elements which we are confronted with. It means indeed, what does a customer need? How you anticipate on that? Others are dealing with that as well, and others do not necessarily need to be the incumbents. I'm talking about now the fintechs, but I'm definitely talking about the big techs, which are doing exactly the same thing, and which looking more and more to what we in the financial industry are doing. For instance, the payment services, they eat part of our profit there, and so on and so forth. So that's part of that as well. But the changing customer behavior has an immediate impact on the way we are organized. Has as such nothing to do with the pure profit generation and sales. It has to do with the way we are organized. Straight-through processing, in that perspective, is something which is of utmost importance. And that is a challenge for all the incumbents in the financial industry. And if you put it all together, I would say, listen, anticipating the change of customer behavior going forward is the big impact, is the most important part. And it entails a lot of things which you do not see at the surface.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.